Hello everybody, I hope all is well. So in the previous videos, we went over the topic of does God exist, and we proved God using the first cause argument, intelligent design argument, and fine-tuning argument. So once we had strong evidence for God, we posed the question, if there is a God and he created this world, what's the purpose of life? Why did God bring us into the world? Because we see such an elaborate world, and there must be a purpose for why God created the world. It wasn't that God was just bored, right? So that's where religion came in. We went over the major world religions, Christianity and Islam, and we made the claim that religion tries to come answer the question of what the purpose of life is, why God put us into the world. And there's so many different religions and cults, and how do you know which one's from God? Everyone claims to have the truth. And we said that if a way to tell a book is not from God is if a book has a mistake in it. So we showed mistakes in the Quran, right, of the Muslims Quran, and we showed mistakes in the New Testament of the Christians. Therefore, if there's mistakes in those books and they claim it's from God, it can't be that the books are from God, because God doesn't make mistakes. And now that we got all that out of the way, let's take a look at Judaism, right? Judaism is the mother religion, and all these are daughter religions. Judaism's it's the first monotheistic religion in the entire world. Now, the question is, how do we know Judaism's for God? Maybe it's man-made like all the other religions. So, just like we said that if a book has mistakes in it, that the book can't probably be from God, because God doesn't make mistakes. On the other hand, if a book contains information in it that no man could have known at the time it was written, then the book is probably from God. And for example, let's say there's a book that's written 3,300 years ago. And in the book, it talks about Osama bin Laden, 9/11, Twin Towers, New York, Manhattan, whatever. It gives all these details, right? If you see a book like that was written 3,300 years ago, and you see that book today that it predicted that event to happen, right? You would say that no way a human being could have written such a book, because it's so it predicted the future. And not only that, let's say the book kept getting it right and kept giving more accurate descriptions of the future, and you saw that the book contained information that no way a human could have known 3,300 years ago, then that's very strong evidence suggesting that the book is probably from God. So now, this is what we're going to do with the Torah. Let's see if the Torah really is from God. So we're going to go through proofs of how we know the Torah is from God. So, Judaism. So we're going to go into astronomy proofs. There's different categories of proofs. We're going to start with proofs that relate to astronomy. So, proof number 1. So, we know that according to the Jewish calendar goes based off of the moon, right? For example, if it's Rosh Hashanah or Rosh Chodesh, right? Rosh Hashanah is the new year. Rosh Chodesh is the new month. We know that whenever you look at, since it's the first of the month, right? You know that if you look outside, you're going to see the new moon, right? The new moon is, meaning the moon is like, basically it's getting blocked. It's all blacked out, right? No reflection from the sun. So that's the new moon. And then if you count 15 days later, you get the full moon. And then if you count another 15 days, you go back to the new moon. So that's called the lunar month, the lunar cycle. Now, why is this such a big deal? So back then, they didn't have calendars. They didn't have iCalendar. You pull out your iPhone, know what date it was. So how would you know the date? It's very simple. You look up at the sky at nighttime, and you see the moon. If you saw the new moon, right, meaning the moon is black, you know it's the first of the month. If you saw a full moon, you know it's the 15th of the month. It's very simple. Now, the Jewish calendar, since it's based off that, so if you look at a lot of the major holidays like Pesach, I think maybe Shavuot, Sukkot, whatever, all these other holidays, they all fall out on the 15th of the month when you have a full moon. So that's why if people back then, if they wanted to know the holidays and stuff, they would find out when Rosh Chodesh was, the new moon, right? And they would count 15 days from that day, and then you had the full moon. So that's why it's so important, the lunar cycle. The lunar cycle and the calendar and how it works. Now, the lunar cycle is precisely 30 days. So every 30 days you're going to get a new thing. Now, let's go look at what the Gemara says about the new moon. So here's the new moon, and then here's a picture. Okay. So if you go to the Gemara, right, Talmud Bavli, Tractate Rosh Hashanah 25a, the Talmud records an incident where so back then you had two witnesses. They would go to the court, right, the Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin was like the Supreme Court, and they were actually in the Kotel, right in the area of the Bet HaMikdash, the Temple Mount, and they had like their own room. It was called, they had their own room there. And so what would happen? Two witnesses would come to the court, the Supreme Court, and they would testify that they saw the new moon, right? The new moon. And now the chief of the court, his name was Rabban Gamliel. So one day it was a cloudy day, and two witnesses came to the chief of the court, Rabban Gamliel, and they told Rabban Gamliel that we saw the new moon, and so tell the Bet Din, the Supreme Court, to declare the new month. And so Rabban Gamliel goes to them and says, I'm very sorry to tell you, but you're wrong. So they asked him, how are we wrong? How do you know we're wrong? What do you mean? We saw with our own eyes the new moon. So he told them that basically he has a 1,300-year-old tradition. So basically from our time, from 3,300 years ago, from the time of Moses, he said he received a tradition from Moses that the renewal of the moon can never be less than 29 days and a half, 2/3 of an hour, and 73 parts of a minute. You could find this incident recorded in the Talmud Bavli, Rosh Hashanah 25a. Now, if you put that into decimal format, 29 days and a half, so 29.5, right? 2/3 of an hour, that gives you, and 73 parts of a minute gives you the calculation of 29.53590. Okay, fine. So I said before that the lunar month was 30 days. Well, it's not really 30 days. It's really 29.53590 days. Now, what's the big deal, 30 days or 29.5 days? It's a really big deal. Because 29, that 0.5 is really half a day. And if I estimate by 30 when it's really 29.5, the calendar is going to be, eventually after a couple months, the calendar is going to be off by a couple of days. Now, if for example, let's say you declare Rosh Hashanah when a day after when it's really supposed to be, right? Rosh Hashanah was a day before, and you declared it a day later because you counted at the 30th at day number 30. Now, what's going to happen? Since you miscalculated the first of the month, people are going to, let's say Yom Kippur is 15 days later, right? So people are going to celebrate Yom Kippur, let's say they're going to celebrate on Thursday, when Yom Kippur was really on Wednesday because you're a day off. That's why it's so critical that you're precise on the calendar, so you don't, because if someone eats on Yom Kippur, it's karet, right? It's a huge deal. Or same thing with Pesach. If you miscalculate the dates and you're not precise, you do 30 days instead of 29 and a half days, and you're off on a couple of days, you're going to be celebrating Pesach on the wrong day. So you're going to be eating chametz when you're allowed to, and when it's Pesach, you're going to think, oh, Pesach passed, it was a week ago. When in reality, it's Pesach today, and you're going to eat chametz on Pesach, which is a big deal. And Judaism is such a critical, it's a religion that's based off of time. It's so critical, time in Judaism. That's why it's so important that we're super precise. And it's not like Rabban Gamliel saying, oh, I'm such a genius, I came up with this number myself. He said, no, we needed to know the precise date of the new moon, so God told us this. So God told him that, God told Moses, right, and they passed it down generation to generation, that the renewal of the moon can never be less than 29.53590. Okay, fine. So what's the big deal about that? Now, if you go to Google, right, how long is the lunar month? NASA, right, earthsky.org, all these space agencies give you the exact number that the Torah gave 3,300 years ago. They give the number of 29.5359 days. Now, I understand how NASA got the number. I understand how earthsky.org got the number. It's very simple. These billion-dollar space agencies have satellites, telescopes, calculators, all this technology. Of course they're going to get such a number 5 after the decimal place. Now the big question, that's today, fine, I understand that with the technology of today, but how did the Torah get this number? This is written 3,300 years ago, right? We received this information that long ago. How did the Torah get so precise in this number, right? Only who can, again, this is way before Galileo and all the telescopes, everything. There's no way. How can a human being know such information? So what can we conclude from this? We can conclude that this information is divine information. Only God can know 3,300 years ago the precise decimal place, the amount of time that it takes for the lunar month, whatever, the precise time for it, 29.53590 days. So again, this is one proof of how the Torah is divine. No way a human being could know such information back then. Now I'm going to give multiple proofs of different categories, and especially of this category, I'm going to give multiple proofs. So yeah, that's one example. It's an amazing example, but I'm going to give way more examples. But when you look at the proofs, don't look at them all in one by themselves. Don't judge it each one by itself. Judge them as a whole. So I'm going to go through the next proof, and then let's keep seeing how the Torah is making crazy predictions that no way a human being can know. So that's proof number 1, right? How did the Torah know how long a lunar month is? Okay, how did the Torah know? Let's go to the next question. Let's go to the next proof. So until we had satellites, right? The ancient scientists, right? They believed that the Earth stood on 3 elephants that was on top of a turtle. Well, that's obviously ridiculous. We know that today. That's ridiculous because we have satellites and stuff. But again, I don't blame the ancient scientists for thinking like that. Now, how do we know the Earth is in space? Like I said before, once the people went to the moon and you have satellites in space, you could take a picture of the Earth. You could see that the Earth is hanging in space, right? Earth is not on top of anything. There's no foundation. It's just quote unquote floating in space, right? Now, today with satellite imaging, we've come to realize that these myths are primitive and silly. But what did the ancient Jews believe? They didn't have to look too hard, right? Because the book of Job, the book of Iyub, tells us that God hangs the earth over nothingness. Now, when was this written? The book of Job was written 3,300 years ago. Job lived that long ago, right? This is one of the books of the Tanakh, of the Torah, the Jewish Bible, right? Now, the question is, in the book of Job, the Torah tells us that God hangs the earth over nothingness. The Torah said it 3,300 years ago. And when did we find out that the earth is hanging in nothingness? Today, once we had satellites and a lot of stuff. Now the question is, how the heck, if I'm a human being living 3,300 years ago and I'm in the Middle East, right? The person who wrote the Torah lived in the Middle East. How would I know that the earth is hanging on nothingness? And with such confidence, I would write it in my book, yeah, you know what, the earth hangs in nothingness, right? This is obviously something that, if the person got lucky, he got lucky, but again, it seems too good to be true, right? Again, second time he's being lucky with astronomical calculations and predictions, right? But the bottom line is that no way a human being could know that information, that the earth is hanging in nothingness 3,300 years ago. And the Torah says it with such confidence to show you that who could only know this information? Again, 3,000. I understand today we know, it's easy to know, we have satellites. But back then, how can someone be so confident with such information? Obviously, it's not a human being saying this. This is from the creator of the universe. The creator of the universe knows if the earth is floating in air, hanging in space, right? Just like the Torah says. Again, how did the Torah know? Now, the next proof goes back to the Big Bang Theory. So, we said before that until the 1960s, that the overwhelming opinion of the scientific community was that the universe was eternal, meaning that the universe was never created, always existed. Now, since the universe always existed, this meant that the opening sentence of the Jewish Bible, right, the Torah, that the opening sentence, in the beginning, right, Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim v'et haaretz, in the beginning of God's creating the heavens and earth, is wrong. If the Torah says the universe is the beginning, until the 1960s, the major scientific opinion of all the big scientists was that the universe always existed. So that means for thousands of years, even the ancient scientists, Aristotle, when the Jews told them that the universe is beginning, everyone's laughing at the Jews. What are you guys saying? Universe always existed, yada, yada, yada. Even the biggest scientist, Albert Einstein, believed in that theory, right? It was a major scientific opinion before the 1960s. Now, in 1927, scientist George Lemaitre, he proposed the theory that the universe did not always exist, but had a beginning. And this was known as the Big Bang Theory. Eventually, through the discoveries of famous scientists, right, Edwin Hubble, Arno Penzias, Robert Wilson, the theory of the universe always existing was disproven, and the Big Bang became the accepted theory in science. And the Big Bang Theory states that the universe had a beginning, right? Now, these scientists had to use powerful telescopes, satellites, and billions of dollars worth of equipment to discover what the Torah already stated 3,300 years ago. As we said before, the very first words of the Jewish Torah, the Bible, right, is that in the beginning God created the heavens and earth. Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. The author of the Bible was so confident that the universe had a beginning that he made it the first words of his book. How can a human being know with such certainty such information? It's unbelievable. How did the Torah, written 3,300 years ago, know this information? Scientists are coming to this information now because they have the technology. But how did the Torah know? How did the Torah know? And it's funny, the person who wrote the Torah, let's say I'm trying to fake a book right now. Why would I write the first sentence of my book that the universe had a beginning? When someone could come one day and say, no, you disproven, the universe didn't have a beginning. So with that being said, the person who wrote the Torah had such confidence, again, to show you that no way a human being can know such information, and only the creator of the universe. Not only that, so fine, science caught up with the Torah, that the universe had a beginning. Not only that, the Torah says that on the first day of creation, Vayom Elokim Yihi Or, and Vayihi Or. God said on the first day, the first thing God created, right, in the universe, the first thing that came into being was something called Or, right? We translate it as light, but whatever, something that's similar to light, right? Something called Or. Now, as we know that if you look at the picture to the right of the Big Bang, you see what was the first thing that happened in the Big Bang? What was the first singularity? It was a, quote unquote, it was a singularity of energy, a ball of matter and energy, right? So it was a sort of like, let's say, an energy, a light, right? So again, how the Torah, before scientists, before technology, 3,300 years ago, not only tells you the universe has a beginning, but the universe, the first thing that came into being was some form of energy, some form of light. And the Big Bang Theory, again, comes to prove that the Torah was right. How did the Torah know this? How can a human being know this information 3,300 years ago? Again, this is all pointing to a divine information from a divine being, God, right? Only God can know such information. God was there. He created the universe. He knows. And he told Moses, who wrote, right, who is the scribe writing the Torah, how he created the universe. And again, science is catching up to the Torah. Now, just a add-on to that, there's a very big sage. His name is the Ramban, right? Nachmanides, and he has a commentary on Genesis, on Bereshit, and again he says some crazy scientific discoveries, and he takes no credit from it. He says that he received this as a tradition from the previous generations because the specific people throughout the generation to know the secrets of Genesis, of secrets of creation that Moses passed down, and he's one of the people who had the tradition, and he wrote it in his commentary to the Torah of 3 crazy discoveries. He said, number 1, that the entire universe was condensed into a very small point. And as we know in the previous video, when we talked about the first cause argument, we said that the scientists say that everything you see in the universe was, since atoms are 99% empty space, right? Everything you see was that's in the universe, the earth, the planets, the stars, and the galaxies, all were condensed into that singularity, right? That let's say it, to simplify it, that ball of energy, right? Even though it's not really about singularity, that ball of energy. Everything in the universe was condensed into that ball of energy. And guess what? Ramban, before scientists came, before Hubble came and all these other scientists and Lemaitre, Ramban said it in his commentary to the Torah. Not only that, Ramban says that the light the entire universe was made from had no substance to it. Meaning this wasn't something physical. This was something with no substance, right? Immaterial. We know energy is it exists, it's there, but it's something that has no substance to it, right? Again, how did Ramban know such information before scientists? And another crazy statement Ramban said, which Albert Einstein actually got the Nobel Prize for, right? Was that once you have material, you have time. Meaning when there's no material, there's no time. That's why we start counting time at the moment of the Big Bang, because we had some quote-unquote material. We had substance, we had something, right? That's when time began. But and Albert Einstein said that theory, but way before Einstein, 1,000 years before Einstein, Ramban in his commentary to the Torah tells us that once you have material, you have time. Again, Ramban's not coming to claim anything that he's so smart and he's claiming that this is a tradition that's been passed down to him. Again, how does he know? How does the Torah know this, right? How does the Torah have such information before scientists? Another crazy discovery. Okay, and again, same thing. This is connecting back to what we said before. We said here that, I think I said in the first video, the first cause video, that the scientists say that they scientifically proved Hubble with his telescope using, it was called redshift or whatever, I don't want to get into all the details, but he proved that the universe is expanding, right? It's scientifically proven. It's this in the scientific community, everyone knows that the universe is expanding. But guess what? The Torah, before scientists, 3,300 years ago, right? I think 3,000 years ago, right? Around that time, the Torah tells us the universe is expanding. You see in Psalms, right, in Tehillim, chapter 104, verse 2, it tells us that God stretches out the heavens, the universe, like a curtain. And then you see in the prophet Isaiah, chapter 51, verse 13, it says, God, your creator, stretches out the heavens, right? So you see here another proof. How did the Torah know 3,000 years ago that the universe is expanding? Again, we only knew that once scientists came and once Hubble came and all these scientists proved it to us. They showed it scientifically. But again, the Torah has such all this information, and it can't be a human being can know such information back then. Again, it's pointing to an ultimate being, a supreme being that gave over this information to these humans, right? And we know from the Torah, God told Moses. Okay, so again, how did the Torah know this? How did the Torah know all these discoveries? Again, divine information. Only to show you that no way the Torah can be written up by a human being, only by the creator of the universe. Okay, next proof. There's one more. I think this is the last astronomy proof. Or there might be one more after this. Okay, so you look in the sky, how many stars can you count? Let's say 10, let's say 1,000, 10,000, maybe 20,000 max, fine. Now, that's until the Galileo came, I think around 500 years ago, people thought that's how many stars in the universe. But Galileo, using his telescope, right, showed that there's not tens of thousands of stars, there's actually millions and millions and millions of stars in the universe. Okay, fine. So what's the big deal? How does this connect with the Torah? So if you go to the Talmud, right, Gemara, you go to Tractate Brachot, page 32b, you see an incident recorded regarding the Jews and God. So this is during the time of the second temple was destroyed, and we know if you learn Jewish history that a lot of tragedies happened to the Jewish people. The Romans murdered many Jews, millions and millions of Jews, and the temple was destroyed, and a lot of harsh things happened. So the Jews, after going through all this hardship, they go to God and they say, God, what happened? You left us? You let our enemies take over? What happened? You don't love us anymore? You neglected us? Then God replies to the Jewish people, and by the way, he's using Roman army terminology because they lived in the time of the Romans. So if you see the word raton, karton, gistera, don't worry about the words because this is just saying group. This is another way of saying groups, but using Roman army terminology. But put that to the side. God goes to the Jews and he says to the Jewish people, I created 12 sections in the heaven, and each and every section I created 30 armies, and each and every army I created 30 legion, and each and every legion I created 30 raton, and each and every raton I created 30 karton, and each and every karton I created 30 gistra, and each and every gistra I hung 365,000 myriad of stars, and we know myriad is 10,000, and all that I created for you. I created that for your sake, and you said that I forsake you, I left you, that God has forgot about you. So basically, Jews say to God, God, why'd you leave us? What happened? Da, da, da. And God says, what are you talking about? You see all these stars in the universe? I created that for you. Now if we multiply all these numbers, 12 times 30 times 30 times 30 times 30 times 30 times 365,000 times 10,000, what number you get? You get this number here, but I'm going to put it in decimal form. You get 10 to the 18th power, a 1 with 18 zeros. So again, this was written 2,000 years ago. Basically, this was written about 1,000 years before the invention of the telescope, the first telescope by Galileo. So the Torah gives us this number about 1,000 years before Galileo. And what did I say before? That people thought there's 10,000 stars in the sky, 20,000, right? As many as they could count. And the Jews are telling them, no. For thousands of years, the Jews are telling them there's gazillions of stars in the sky. You can't count them. God told us in the Torah, right? How many stars in the universe? 10 to the 18th power. And again, this is I gave an estimate. I estimated the number because stars are always being created and destroyed every second. So the number might be a little bit off from because NASA, all these space agencies, they probably recorded the number now. And the Torah recorded it, so it's going to be a little bit different, but it doesn't matter. So let's see what's because again it's in the same amount of time. So let's see what does NASA say. So you go look at the biggest space agencies, NASA, EarthSky.org, all these space agencies. Guess how many stars they say in the universe? They give around the same estimate as the Torah: 10 to the 18th, 10 to the 19th, plus or minus 10 to the first power. Right? Crazy. So scientists again. They're confirming what the Torah told us 2,000 years ago. My question is, how can it, if people claim, yeah, Torah is made up by human beings, how can a human being 2,000 years ago know? Okay, it's not like he's saying there's a million stars. He's giving an exact number, and science is confirming these numbers. How can a human being make up such a number and be precise with it? Again, you see so many proofs that there's no way the Torah could be written by a human being. It's just unbelievable. How did the Torah know how many stars in the universe? This is something only the creator of the universe, because God created all the stars. He knows how many stars in the universe. That's why he tells us in the Torah. So again, how did the Torah know? So with that being said, these are all the astronomy proofs for proving that the Torah is from God. And now there's different I'm going to go into different other categories of proofs, zoology, archaeology, all that stuff. But this is the astronomy section of the proofs that there's no way. So what's our conclusion from this? That there's no way the Torah could be a man-made document. There's no way a human being could be so smart back then to write this all in a book and be precise with it. There's no way a human being can know the stars in the universe, how long a lunar month is, 5 after the decimal place, that the universe had a beginning, it's expanded. There's no way a human can know this. What does this point to? Only the creator of the universe, God, can know this information. And all this is written in the Torah, to show you that the Torah is not a man-made document like people think, that rabbis made it up. No. Only the creator of the universe could give over such information. So that's with the astronomy proofs. We're going to go next into zoology proofs. Thank you for listening.